Hello, you're watching World News on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. We start with Friday's highly anticipated summit in Alaska between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russia's President Vladimir Putin. Expectations were high, but the meeting yielded no major breakthroughs. Here's a look at how it all unfolded. No deal has been reached to stop the war in Ukraine at the meeting between the U.S. and Russian leaders in Anchorage, Alaska on Friday. Still, both Trump and Putin described the talks as productive. So what comes next? Calls to NATO and Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky.
I believe we had a very productive meeting. There were many, many points that we agreed on, most of them, I would say, a couple of big ones that we haven't quite gotten there, but we've made some headway. So there's no deal until there's a deal. I will call up NATO in a little while. I will call up the various people that I think are appropriate, and I'll, of course, call up President Zelensky and tell him about today's meeting. It's ultimately up to them. They're going to have to agree with what Marco and Steve and some of the great people from the Trump administration who've come here, Scott and John Radcliffe. Thank you very much. But we have some of our really great leaders. They've been doing a phenomenal job. We also have some tremendous Russian business representatives here. And I think, you know, everybody wants to deal with us. We've become the hottest country anywhere in the world in a very short period of time. And we look forward to that. We look forward to dealing. We're going to try and get this over with. We really made some great progress today. I've always had a fantastic relationship with President Putin, with Vladimir. We had many tough meetings, good meetings. We were interfered with by the Russia hoax that made it a little bit tougher to deal with, but he understood it. But we had an extremely productive meeting, and many points were agreed to. There are just a very few that are left. Some are not that significant. One is probably the most significant, but we have a very good chance of getting there. But we had some good meetings over the years, right? Good, productive meetings over the years, and we hope to have that in the future. But let's do the most productive one right now. We're going to stop really 5, 6, 7,000, thousands of people a week from being killed, and President Putin wants to see that as much as I do. So, again, Mr. President, I'd like to thank you very much, and we'll speak to you very soon and probably see you again very soon.
Our negotiations were held in a constructive and mutually respectful atmosphere. The talks were very thorough and useful. As you know, one of the central topics was the situation in Ukraine. We see the willingness of the US administration and President Trump himself to facilitate the resolution of the Ukrainian conflict and their eagerness to understand its origins. As I've said more than once, Russia views the events in Ukraine as a fundamental threat to our national security. I hope today's agreements will serve as a reference point for solving the Ukrainian problem and mark the beginning of restoring business-like, pragmatic relations between Russia and the US.
In his first trip to the U.S. since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Russian President Vladimir Putin met with U.S. President Donald Trump in Alaska. Although the visit was surrounded by pageantry and symbolism, it yielded no tangible results. Trump welcomed the Russian leader on the red carpet as U.S. military aircraft flew overhead. It was not clear whether the talks in Anchorage on Friday had produced meaningful steps toward a peace deal. Before the summit, Trump announced that his goal was to achieve a ceasefire and threatened Russia with severe consequences if it did not happen. After the talks, Trump noted that they agreed on many issues, but several important issues remained unresolved. Putin said he expected Ukraine and its European allies to accept the results of the U.S.-Russia negotiation, warning them not to undermine the progress toward a resolution.
you very much. Thank you.
After the summit concluded, Donald Trump gave an extensive interview to Fox News. Quoting now, "We need to make a deal. Russia is a great power and Ukraine is not." Those are the words of President of the United States, Donald Trump, who emphasized that ending the war now depends on the president of Ukraine.
We had a very good meeting today, and I think a lot of points were negotiated on behalf of Ukraine and on behalf of the whole NATO situation, where we're dealing very well with a lot of foreign countries that are great, European countries. Look, as far as I'm concerned, there's no deal until there's a deal, but we did make a lot of progress. Now it's really up to President Zelensky to get it done. And I would also say the European nations, they have to get involved a little bit, but it's up to President Zelensky. I think we are, and if they'd like, I'll be at that next meeting. They're going to set up a meeting now between President Zelensky and President Putin. And myself, I guess, I didn't ask you about it. Not that I want to be there, but I want to make sure it gets done. And we have a pretty good chance of getting it done. The meeting was a 10 in the sense that we got along great, and it's good when, two big powers get along, especially when they're nuclear powers. We're number one, they're number two in the world. And it's a big deal. That's a big deal. We're pretty close to a deal. Now, look, Ukraine has to agree to it. Maybe they'll say no. And, they're fighting a big war machine. And I think are close to a deal, but I don't like saying it. I always say, if I'm really close, I say 50-50, because so many things can happen. But I think President Putin would like to solve the problem.
President Donald Trump told Fox News Channel's special report that he called the Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko before the Alaska summit to thank him for the release of international prisoners. Trump said they discussed the release of more political prisoners and the potential for a ceasefire in Ukraine.
I called him to thank him. He released 16 prisoners, and it was a very nice thing. They've been trying to get these 16 people out for a long time. Biden was obviously unable to do it. Even other countries, because it's not just Americans. And he was great. He let them out, and I just called to thank him. And believe it or not, there's about 1,300 more. And I think he'll let them out, too, at some point in the very near future. He's very positive about it. He's friends with President Putin, as you know, very, very close neighbors. And they work together. And he thinks that President Putin wants to make a deal. He wants to stop this horrible killing. He mentioned it himself. He said it's a horrible situation. And he said he has great respect for me and for the country, but he didn't have a lot of respect for our country under a certain different leader. And I can understand that, because nobody else did either.
EU ambassadors are set to discuss last night's meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and the Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin in a few hours, according to a Sky News EU source. It has also been reported that European leaders and the U.S. president will hold a virtual meeting on Saturday, joined by Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, to discuss the conclusions and possible future actions regarding Ukraine.
We'll speak to you very
Putin
soon.
is playing mind games, Vladimir Dubrovik, the director of the Center for International Studies, said in an interview. The upcoming episode of Ukraine This Week. Our guest described the Russian president's behavior as a cunning tactic to stall the peace process, buy time from the U.S. president, and avoid sanctions. Tune in to TVP World for the new episode at 11:30.
Since Trump came back to the White House, Ukraine also didn't necessarily like the idea of comprehensive ceasefire as a starter of the process, because we also wanted to know what would happen later. Okay, so the first step, ceasefire. What happens next with the security guarantees, with maybe peacekeepers in Ukraine, with maybe something else, some security assurances for Ukraine, something like that. But we were not given any, and that led to confrontation in that ominous meeting, in a late February 28th it was, in the White House with Zelensky, when there was a shouting match between Trump and Zelensky, because Zelensky said, Putin is known for violating his word, for violating ceasefires. We know it all along, and tell us what's going to happen next. And Trump didn't like that line of arguing. But then later on in Saudi Arabia, in a meeting in Jeddah, Ukrainian delegation agreed, okay, with American idea. Okay, let's do ceasefire, comprehensive ceasefire. And Putin, ever since, he is pushing, he's doing a lot of fog and a lot of confusion. He's basically saying, he's playing mind games. He's saying, I am in favor of this, ceasefire, but here's a list of demands and conditions that Ukraine need to meet before we actually proceed with ceasefire. And in that list, you basically have capitulation of Ukraine.
As the Polish capital and the coast enjoy the annual celebrations of Armed Forces Day, danger beyond Poland's eastern border is more evident today than ever. Poland is now among NATO's top defense spenders, putting an emphasis on becoming more self-reliant in terms of domestic military production. Friday's military parade carries a message beyond remembrance. According to experts, it is a signal to allies and adversaries alike that Poland is prepared for whatever comes next.
Military parade is a show of force. It's natural. The message is not only to interior message to our society, it's also a message sent abroad, especially to Russia. That Polish army is ready and can and have enough defense capabilities to stop the potential aggression.
In recent years, Poland has gone on a defense spending spree, arming itself with the latest land, sea and air power. Warsaw is now among NATO's top defense spenders, with plans for the largest tank fleet in Europe, over 1,100 by 2030, more than Germany, the UK and France combined. This includes the K2 Black Panther tank from South Korea, as well as the German Leopard 2. It's also ordering 96 Apache helicopters, second only to the United States, and 32 cutting-edge F-35 jets to guard NATO's eastern flank. But it isn't just modern equipment from abroad. Poland is also beefing up its own industry.
And we also have to purchase simultaneously infantry fighting vehicles in Polish industry. We have to purchase counter-drone systems. We have to adapt to the modern warfare. So we also have to buy a lot of unmanned aerial vehicles.
Alongside modern tanks and air systems from South Korea and the US, Poland fields homegrown firepower, from the Krab self-propelled howitzer to the Rosomak armored fighting vehicle. The war in Ukraine has also underscored the importance of UAVs, and Poland's Fly-Eye drone is now part of its deterrence strategy. Ordinary Poles say they can feel the difference.
We have so many hopes. And looking at all the equipment and everything, looking at the parade, I'm really impressed and really proud as a Pole, absolutely.
Well, we have the kind of neighbors we have. It's very modern now. When you walk between foreign and domestically produced vehicles, there isn't much of a difference. We're going in the right direction for sure, and we're getting to the level of Western states.
No matter whether the military hardware is Polish or foreign, the message is the same. Poland is ready for whatever comes next. And today's display makes that unmistakably clear. Sasha Farbach for TVP World. In several cities across Serbia, citizens gathered to protest in front of police headquarters and the offices of the ruling Serbian Progressive Party, which is led by President Aleksandar Vučić. The protesters were joined by Belgrade bikers in solidarity with one of their own who was reportedly beaten during one of this week's demonstrations. As the protests in Serbia enter their 9th month, clashes between demonstrators and police have become more frequent and increasingly violent. Protests first erupted after the collapse of the Novi Sad railway station roof, a tragedy that killed 16 people and is widely blamed on entrenched corruption. That's all for this Global News Update here on TVP World. Stay tuned, much more coming up right here. Don't go away. Goodbye.